There's something unsettling about watching your life unravel in real time. The job that felt secure suddenly disappears. The relationship you thought would last forever crumbles without warning. The plans you made, the future you imagined, the version of yourself you were becoming, all of it seems to dissolve like sugar in rain. And in those moments when everything feels chaotic and uncertain, there's this voice in your head that whispers the same question over and over. What's wrong with me? Why is everything falling apart? But what if I told you that nothing is actually falling apart? What if what feels like destruction is actually construction? What if the chaos isn't random, but purposeful? What if your life isn't breaking down, but breaking open? This isn't some feel-good platitude designed to make you feel better about difficult times. This is about understanding something most people never realize, that there's an intelligence at work in your life that operates beyond your conscious awareness, a force that knows exactly what needs to be dismantled before something better can be built. And the more you resist this process, the more painful it becomes. Today we're going to explore why the moments that feel like endings are actually beginnings, why the experiences that seem to tear you apart are often the very things that put you back together in a stronger, more authentic way, and why learning to trust this process, instead of fighting it, changes everything about how you navigate difficult times. Because here's what nobody tells you about transformation. It doesn't happen when everything is going well. It happens when everything seems to be going wrong. It happens in the breakdown, in the confusion, in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. And if you can learn to see these moments differently, you'll never fear change again. Think about a caterpillar. At some point in its development, it doesn't just grow wings and transform into a butterfly. The entire structure of the caterpillar literally dissolves. Its body breaks down into a kind of cellular soup. From the outside, it would look like the caterpillar is dying, disintegrating, falling apart completely. But something remarkable is happening inside that cocoon. The breakdown is creating the space for something entirely new to emerge. Your life works the same way. What feels like falling apart is often falling into place. But because we can't see the bigger picture while we're in the middle of it, we interpret destruction as failure instead of recognizing it as preparation. Most of us spend our entire lives trying to build something: a career, a relationship, an identity, a sense of security. We stack these pieces carefully, one on top of another, creating what we think is a solid foundation. And for a while, it feels good. It feels safe. It feels like progress, until something happens that shakes the whole structure. Maybe it's a loss, a betrayal, a failure, an unexpected change. And suddenly, everything you built starts to wobble. Your first instinct is to grab onto whatever you can, to hold the pieces together, to fix what's breaking, to get back to where you were before things started falling apart. But what if the falling apart isn't the problem? What if trying to hold on to what's breaking is what's actually causing the pain? There's a difference between destruction and dissolution. Destruction is violent, random, meaningless, but dissolution is purposeful. It's the intelligent breaking down of what no longer serves to make room for what wants to emerge. And your life has this built-in wisdom that knows exactly when something needs to dissolve. That job that felt secure but left you feeling empty? Maybe it needed to end so you could discover work that actually fulfills you. That relationship that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow on the inside? Maybe it needed to end so you could learn what genuine connection feels like. Those plans that seemed so important but never quite felt right? Maybe they needed to fall through so you could find a path that actually aligns with who you're becoming. But here's the tricky part. You can't see this while it's happening. When you're in the middle of dissolution, it just feels like loss. It feels like failure. It feels like everything is going wrong. That's because your mind is still operating from the old framework. It's still trying to measure success based on what you used to want, what you used to think mattered, who you used to be. But what if who you used to be is exactly what needs to dissolve? What if the version of yourself that built that life, made those choices, created those patterns, has served its purpose and it's time for something new to emerge? What if the falling apart isn't happening to you, but for you? This is where most people get stuck. They spend so much energy trying to go back to how things were that they miss what's trying to come forward. They're so focused on rebuilding the old that they can't see the new that's trying to take shape. They treat change like an enemy instead of recognizing it as an ally. But change isn't random. It's not chaotic. It's not meaningless. There's a rhythm to it, a timing, an intelligence that's far more sophisticated than your conscious mind could ever orchestrate. And when you start to trust this process instead of fighting it, something shifts. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming a participant in your own transformation. Think about the last time something significant changed in your life. Maybe it was painful at first. Maybe it felt like everything was falling apart. But if you look back now, can you see how that change led to something better? How it opened doors you didn't even know existed? How it introduced you to parts of yourself you never would have discovered otherwise? That's not coincidence. That's the intelligence of dissolution at work. That's life reorganizing itself in ways your logical mind could never have planned. That's falling apart that was actually falling into place. But recognizing this pattern after the fact is different from trusting it while it's happening. When you're in the middle of uncertainty, when everything feels unstable, when you can't see where things are headed, it takes a different kind of faith. Not blind faith, but intelligent faith. Faith based on understanding how transformation actually works. The ancient Greeks had a word for this kind of change. They called it metamorphosis. Not just surface level change, but fundamental transformation. The kind of change that happens at the cellular level. The kind of change that creates something entirely new from what existed before. And metamorphosis always looks like destruction before it looks like creation. Your life is constantly trying to metamorphose, to evolve, to become more authentic, more aligned, more true to what you actually are beneath all the layers of conditioning and expectations and shoulds. But most of the time, you resist this process. You hold on to what's familiar even when it's not serving you. You choose the comfort of the known over the potential of the unknown. And that resistance is what creates suffering. Not the change itself, but your relationship to the change. Not the dissolution, but your attempt to prevent it. Not the falling apart, but your belief that falling apart is something that shouldn't be happening. What would happen if you stopped fighting the process? What would happen if you started to see dissolution not as destruction, but as reorganization? What would happen if you trusted that whatever is falling away is making space for something better to emerge? This doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you stop making choices or taking action. It means you start working with the natural intelligence of change instead of against it. It means you learn to surf the waves of transformation instead of trying to stop the ocean. Here's where everything gets practical, because understanding this intellectually is one thing, but living it is something else entirely. When you're in the thick of uncertainty, when your phone stops ringing with job offers, when someone you love walks away, when your body betrays you, when your dreams feel impossible, it's hard to remember that this might be exactly what needs to happen. So how do you actually trust the process when the process feels like it's destroying you? How do you find peace in the chaos? How do you stop yourself from spiraling into panic every time something shifts? First, you have to understand that your discomfort with uncertainty isn't a character flaw. It's biology. Your brain was designed to predict, to control, to make sense of patterns. Uncertainty triggers ancient survival mechanisms that scream danger even when you're perfectly safe. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a job loss. It just knows something feels threatening and floods your body with chemicals designed to make you fight or run. But here's what's fascinating. The same energy that creates panic can create possibility. The same openness that feels terrifying can become the space where miracles happen. It's not the uncertainty itself that's the problem. It's your relationship to it. When you stop trying to control outcomes and start getting curious about what wants to emerge, everything changes. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of demanding answers immediately, you learn to sit in the questions. Instead of forcing solutions, you create space for them to appear naturally. This isn't about being passive or resigned. This is about understanding that there's a difference between effort and struggle. Effort moves you forward. Struggle keeps you stuck. Effort works with natural timing. Struggle fights against it. Effort feels aligned even when it's challenging. Struggle feels forced even when it's easy. Think of a river flowing around rocks. The water doesn't struggle against the obstacles. It doesn't waste energy trying to move the rocks. It simply finds another way. It adapts. It flows. And eventually, given enough time, even the hardest rock gets worn smooth by water that never fought it directly. Your life wants to flow the same way. But every time you encounter an obstacle, every time something doesn't go according to plan, you tense up. You start pushing. You start forcing. You turn what could be a gentle redirection into an exhausting battle. What if you could learn to flow like water? What if you could trust that every apparent obstacle is actually guidance? What if you could see every closed door as protection from something that wasn't meant for you and every open door as an invitation to something that is? This requires a fundamental shift in how you define success. Most people measure their lives by external markers: the job title, the relationship status, the bank account, the social media followers. But these are just surface measurements. They tell you nothing about whether you're actually aligned with your authentic self. They tell you nothing about whether you're growing, evolving, becoming who you're meant to be. What if success wasn't about achieving specific outcomes, but about how gracefully you navigate change? What if it wasn't about avoiding problems, but about how quickly you learned from them? What if it wasn't about having all the answers, but about asking better questions? When you start measuring your life by these deeper metrics, falling apart stops feeling like failure. It starts feeling like evolution, because every time something dissolves in your life, you have an opportunity to rebuild from a more authentic place. Every time you lose something that wasn't truly yours, you create space for something that is. But this process requires patience, and patience is something our culture doesn't teach very well. We want transformation to happen on our timeline. We want clarity immediately. We want the new to appear before we've fully released the old. But metamorphosis doesn't work that way. There's always a period in the cocoon where nothing seems to be happening, where it just feels dark and confusing and uncertain. That darkness isn't empty, it's pregnant with possibility. That confusion isn't meaningless, it's the scrambling that happens when old patterns break down and new ones haven't formed yet. That uncertainty isn't punishment. It's the space where magic becomes possible. So the next time your life feels like it's falling apart, try something different. Instead of immediately rushing to fix it, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself what might be trying to emerge. Get curious about what this dissolution might be preparing you for. Trust that there's an intelligence at work that's far more sophisticated than your conscious mind. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become responsive instead of reactive. It means you learn to dance with change instead of wrestling with it. It means you start to see endings as beginnings in disguise. Your life isn't falling apart. It's falling into place, but the place it's falling into isn't the place you planned. It's the place you're meant to be. And sometimes the only way to get there is to let everything you thought you knew dissolve so something truer can emerge. Trust the process. Trust the timing. Trust that whatever is leaving your life is making space for something better. Trust that you're not breaking down. You're breaking open. Trust that what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. You just can't see yet. Because on the other side of every dissolution is a version of yourself you never could have imagined. A life more aligned than you ever thought possible. A freedom you never knew you were seeking. And the courage to trust the process again the next time everything seems to be falling apart. That's not falling apart. That's falling into place. And once you understand the difference, you'll never fear change again.